Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today because as of a few days ago, Gopher 64, the N64 emulator was updated. This is basically a combination of the best parts of Mupen 64 along with Ari's, giving you some nice enhancements as well as a lot of accuracy. And honestly, N64 emulation still is a work in progress. There are a ton of emulators out there and everyone does something a little bit differently. But in my opinion, outside of Ari's being that kind of accuracy champion that just runs the game with no real enhancements, I would say Gopher 64 would be my default N64 emulator moving forward. For you to get involved though, to be a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. Now Gopher 64 is basically made up of or comprised of elements of both Ari's as well as Mupen 64, and I think the developers here really borrow and kind of amend and improve the best code from both of those emulators. And that really is why open source emulation development is so important. The developers of Gopher can use parts of both of the other emulators and even improve on them to give us something that's kind of in between both Mupen and Ari's. And you'll see right off the top I am running all of these games in 4x internal rendering resolution mode. That means you're going to get higher quality textures and the game is just going to look a little bit more modern. Now do be aware that's not going to change the geometry in any of the scenes in any way, shape, or form. The amount of polygons that would be on screen in perfect dark if you didn't have this enhancement on are going to be the same amount of polygons that are going to be on screen with 4x mode on. It's just bumping up the internal rendering resolution. But that is something that people really like about Mupen, but honestly, in my experience, I have a lot of issues with it when I use it. Now, just to be clear, I am not knocking Mupen 64 in any way whatsoever. I think it is an outstanding emulator. I just have some issues with some games crashing or hitching when I do have those improvements turned on. Maybe it's just my system, maybe it's just the game I am testing, but those things are actually being solved by Gopher 64. Of all the games I've tested and played in this emulator, I really haven't had any issues whatsoever when I'm using the actual enhancements. Now this definitely still will hitch here and there, as will Ari's. That just seems to be something that is part and parcel part of N64 emulation, but might improve in the future. And even though N64 emulation has been around for forever now, decades in fact, it is still a moving target because the N64 is a very complex piece of hardware. We saw on the Mr. FPGA side of things when Robert FPGA Zoom Sposs was developing that core, and even to this day people are still discovering things about the hardware, whether somebody like Kaze actually improving some of the code in his games or just other people going through and kind of playing around with what it can do. Now you will see here version 1.1.9 is out as of 5 days ago. I think I grabbed that clip a little early, and you're going to get a lot of improvements not into only the games that are mentioned here, but just general stability and performance. Now you do have to have a relatively okay PC to run this thing. You can't just throw a potato at it, but if you have maybe like a Japanese sweet potato style PC, a little bit better than your standard potato, you should be fine, at least for something like 2x internal rendering resolution. And there are a decent amount of options here in Gopher 64. Just enough for you to be able to articulate the image you want, but I do appreciate that there aren't an unlimited amount of options that kind of become daunting. Sometimes emulators will let you change absolutely everything around, and a lot of times 9 out of 10 of those things shouldn't be touched whatsoever. So I kind of like the more curated experience where you can sit down and play N64 without really thinking about anything, but if you do want to play around with kind of the image quality, you can go in and with a very easy toggle menu just go from 1x to 4x and then jump right back into your game. And I think that really is a nice thing. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, of all the N64 emulators on the market, which ones are you using? For me, if I'm just going straight accuracy and want the one-to-one experience as close as I can get it, I would definitely use Ari's. If I want that hardware solution, I'm definitely 100% a Mr. FPGA, and if I want a lot of the enhancements that people love in emulation, I'm going straight to Gopher 64. And that is kind of why I'm doing this video, to give you guys some information on the new build, as well as talking about my de facto favorite emulators. So if you want to see a master video where I go over every single system that's ever been made and tell you which emulator I think is best, leave me a comment down below because I am mulling it over. But I will say Super Mario 64 looks incredible in 4x mode, but let's go into a soundtrack sample so you can hear the audio quality of Gopher 64, and I'll be right back with 3 more games to show you.
Archie! Archie! Hurry! Eva's Archie!
Are these the rebels?
One group of them, sir. They have no strength to resist any longer.
But the leaders are still alive. There's no time now. Join the troops intercepting the ruffians.
Now, I don't care what anyone says, the voice actor for Sin and Punishment definitely was watching some episodes of All in the Family the night before they recorded that voice over, because if that just isn't Edith Bunker, I don't know who it is. And before you think Video Game Esoteric is old enough to be alive when All in the Family was on television, I was not, but as a kid, I loved to watch Nick at Night reruns, and I think I watched the entirety of All in the Family, as well as stuff like Sanford and Son and The Jeffersons, and that is why to this day I still absolutely love those shows. It has nothing to do with N64 emulation outside of the fact that that voice actor doing her own rendition of Edith Bunker sounds exactly like I would expect it to sound on real hardware. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. Now, Sin and Punishment here is a game where I think sometimes internal rendering resolution bumps can actually take away something from a game, because there was a lot more of this kind of disparate volumetric fog cloud thing going on in this scene that is eliminated at least a little bit when you actually go to 4X mode. Now, this is totally subjective as to what you think looks better, and that is the nice thing about Gopher 64 emulation and emulation in general. What I think might be best, you might want to do the exact opposite of, and vice versa. So if I was to play Sin and Punishment again on Gopher 64, I would go back to 1X mode and get that same kind of blurry image. Where something like Castlevania Legacy of Darkness here, I think it looks absolutely outstanding in 4X mode, and you will see that in some instances you can get a better frame rate out of something like an N64 game. There will be options to kind of overclock the CPU, which can cause some instabilities in some games, just like we see on the Mr. FPGA side of things on the Turbo Core, but for the most part it's kind of just a free bonus as far as performance is concerned, because when you have the expansion pack on in Legacy of Darkness, it would always bring the frame rate down on real N64 hardware. But if you actually do that here and then go to 4X mode and overclock the CPU, you can get into a situation where you have a lot better actual image clarity and a lot better performance as well. And obviously this game was originally a 480i game, but you can kind of play around with stuff like that here as well to get more of a progressive look out of it. And I really think that's why Gopher 64 is so impressive. These enhancements just give you a better experience for N64 games if that's what you're looking for, and it just seems to be more stable and a little less buggy than something like Mupen 64, at least in my experience. But again, it is based at least in part on Mupen 64, so some of that underlying code is still in there. The developers of Gopher just must have done something, at least for me personally, to get better performance. But you can leave me a comment down below. Do you use Mupen, and how do you find kind of those enhancements? Because I'm not using them, I seem to get a much better result. But last time I tried to get perfect dark running for a demo video, I crashed it twice in the introductory sequence. Now, one game I'm always going to test on emulation is going to be Bomberman Hero, because this is my favorite game of all time, and with this new version of Gopher 64, I would say it seems downright perfect to me. I have played Bomberman 64 on basically every platform, emulation and FPGA wise it can run on, including of course real hardware, so I really do know this game front to back, and there's just something about it. It's so charming and so unique. I think I just got it as a kid at a point in time in my life where something could just stick in my brain and I would love it forever. And the best thing about Bomberman Hero honestly is the absolute 10 out of 10 soundtrack. It is music that's probably too good for a video game and could have been used for some sort of actual musical album. So we're going to do the next soundtrack sample to make sure it sounds good, and I'll be right back. Now there's a situation in Gopher 64, the same thing that you might hear in something like Mupen 64, where there's going to be a slight audio hitch. It's just something in these emulators that seems to every once in a while crop up, and it's something that I heard in Bomberman Hero as well. And if there is one thing I would love to see out of Gopher 64, at least by default, is adjusting the audio level volume when you just open up the application and load up a game, because at least on my system it is too loud. It was getting really close to clipping out the channels, and I had to bring that audio down in Resolve by about 8 decibels to get it to a point in time where I thought the balance against the voice and the rest of the audio in the video was accurate. But with the new updates to Gopher 64, N64 emulation got that much better, and even though it's still in development, I can't recommend it enough if you want to check it out. So the link's down in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.